I always like to get a gut check. Are we on track today? Are we off track? You feel good about what we're doing? Yeah. Is that helpful? Okay. I don't want you to feel like we're wasting time, but this is stuff I think is important. But I do realize I'm old, and so I want to make sure that you're finding it valuable. I know this generated lots of good discussion. I've heard it all during lunch. And especially that one about the one. Great discussion. All right, we got 20. We'll 21. That's my friend Winnie. Is that why they named you? No. I love that girl. If I ever recognize her, that's the problem. Winnie changes her hair about every time I see her. It's just different. And where was it I saw I didn't recognize you at first? Was it Restart? Yeah, it was Restart, yeah. She walks in and totally, I did not even recognize her. I'm like, oh, and you are... No, they brought the pictures like, is this you? So that's kind of a running joke between us now. Is that really you, Winnie, or is that just somebody pretending to be you, or I don't know. All right, let's go for it. What would you say the top reason that motivates people to follow a leader? 30% said character. 22% said relationships. 17 said humility. 13 abilities, experience, relevance, convictions. Why did most of you put character?
I think that covers a lot of characteristics.
Okay. Why did you put those who put relationships? Why would you say that?
If the leader has connections with, they know several people.
Okay. So the connections they have. I forgot to. Yeah. Okay. So tell us more about that. Well, if the leader has connections, then what?
People tend to know them better than the other person who won't be a leader.
Okay. So, if you have the relationships, you're going to have more visibility, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, let's go to the next one. What would you say is the main secondary reason that motivates a person? Notice that abilities have now moved up into second place. A character, those of you who didn't vote for it the first time, voted for it the second time. All right? Relationships are still up there. Now suddenly sacrifice comes into it. Experience, humility, insight. Wow. Which one of those characteristics would you say is your strongest trait as a leader? Notice most of you said character. Which of those characteristics would you say is your strongest trait as a leader? And I noticed that a lot of you are proud to say humility. No. Interesting. On a scale of 1 to 5, how well would you say you wield influence? That's interesting, isn't it? You've got 12% that say they wield it very well, 32% say fairly well, 36% said moderately well, 16% not so well, and 4%, I really stink at this. I don't wield it well at all. Okay? So that's pretty fascinating that we've got almost a bell curve, but there's more towards the 4, because I am pretty good. I just want to tell you. No, I'm playing with you. No, leaders have to be confident people. And you got to know that you can wield influence. Hey, Chester. Good to see you. Confident but not cocky. You're confident that you're competent. All right, yeah. We'll let that one settle in. All right, so this afternoon we're talking about how do you wield influence? How do you get people to do what you need them to do? You ever ask that question? As a leader? How do I get them to move? So we're going to talk about that this afternoon as we talk about the Paul Revere principle. There we go. We're up. Anybody ever heard of Malcolm Gladwell? Malcolm Gladwell? He's got some seriously good podcasts. Revisionist History is one of them. He has another one called Tipping Point. He's written a lot of books. He used to work for the New York Times as a reporter. He's seen a whole lot of stuff come across his journalistic desk. And he's kind of watched history play out, and he's been a student of history, and he's gone back and he's looked at those pieces of history that's kind of gotten forgotten or overlooked, and he's dug them out. Now, Malcolm Gladwell went back and he's got a book called Tipping Point, and he tells the story of Paul Revere. You guys remember Paul Revere, right? What did he do? The British are coming. One if by land and two if by sea, right? You remember the thing? Did you know there was another guy that went out same night? Name was William Dawes. You ever heard of him? Only if you're a real student of history do you remember. You kind of go, well, I think I do. And Paul Revere, everybody goes, yeah, I know Paul. The British are coming. Or sometimes they say the redcoats are coming. Both men were independence activists, William Dawes and Paul Revere, during the independence war against Britain in the 1770s. Now, both received the news of the British Army coming to their towns to tame the revolt. So their goal was to warn all the cities along the way and seek to turn out a militia to meet the army. That was their goal. Getting people out of bed, getting their weapons, get them out there so that when the British came across the knoll, Concord, wherever they happened to meet them, they would be there to meet them. They wanted to make sure the British didn't take them by surprise. Both of them rode all night warning all the people they could. Both expended tons of energy. But Paul Revere was far more successful in his journey than William Dawes. He managed to spread the word of the British Army coming much faster and quicker, Revere did. And there was a much larger turnout of patriots there to meet them as a result of Paul's ride than there was of William's ride. And of course, remember Paul, but who remembers really William Dawes or much about him? Yeah, I kind of think I've heard him maybe. I studied about him somewhere back there, I think. William Dawes, yeah. How do you spell that again? Not Doss. That's D-O-S-S. This is D-A-W-E-S, Dawes. So let's examine the why. Paul Revere was an active man, and I would term him as a super connector. In each town he came across, he identified the other super connectors, that is, the people who already held influence in that town, who could spread the word quickly in their city. Prior to that night, Paul had successfully built a huge network of people and political friends across his part of North America. All his prior work paid off on that famous night. He knew who to reach for and the key person to deal with. He didn't just ride willy-nilly through the countryside yelling, "The British are coming." He rode to a connector's house and said, "The British are coming." They connected with their people who connected with their people who connected with. Are you seeing what's happening here? William Dawes was also an independence activist, but he never managed to build a successful network. as successful a network as Paul. He was well known in his city, but did not know anyone outside his city. He had maintained a rather small network, very focused around his local acquaintances. So when he rode all night long to warn the people, he worked just as hard as Paul Revere did. But he reached for the first person he met in any given town. It could have been the town drunk. The British are coming. Yeah, me too. Right on, brother. Right on. How far did that message go? And all of a sudden, this guy's getting gunned down by the British. Oh, that's what he was saying. That particular person did not have all the time, the influence, and the reach to spread the word the British were coming nearly as effectively as the super connectors that Paul contacted. Now the question is, are you a Paul Revere or a William Dawes? Do you build your network before you need it? Do you identify the super connectors in your network? End of the story. Both William Dawes and Paul Revere spent all night writing, but only one is really remembered. Here's the point. Influence the influencers. I coach churches in the process of culture change. And one of the things I tell new pastors as they move into a new congregation, don't worry about reaching everybody. Find out who their influencers are already. I tell pastors, find out the top 3 influencers, influence those people, they'll influence everybody else. Now, are you starting to get a picture here? There's times that we get just any random person and we try to get them to do all the things and we work really hard at it, but we don't go very far. Because that person hasn't spent time developing influence. And so in your ACF groups, you've got people already there that influence people. You know who they are already. I bet that you could probably begin to name them. And if you can't, you're probably it. Which means you have to develop new influencers as well. Influence the influencers because they will influence everyone else. And together, you have a broader, wider reach than if you go alone. Together has power. Together builds momentum faster. Together accomplishes more. So we get to this, the Paul Revere principle. Both Paul and William both made a midnight ride, but only one was able to connect with and influence people. Here it is. The test of a leader's credibility lies in his or her ability to mobilize others. You want to know how well you're doing? How well are you able to mobilize? How well are you able to motivate? And we talked about what actually creates the motivation. What motivates people? Well, there were a lot of people that were asked this question, and here's the answers they gave. Insight, relationship, sacrifice. You've seen these words already once today, haven't you? Or at least a couple times on the survey. Abilities, experience, intuition, character, humility, relevance, convictions. These are things that motivate people. So the question you've got to ask is, where am I on that? Well, what do you mean by all that, Pastor Don? I see the words. I'm not sure exactly how you would define those. Thank you for asking. Character integrity. That means they trust you. You have earned their trust. There's nothing worse than a leader who leads from positional authority. You know the difference between a positional authority and relational authority? Positional authority says, I have the office, obey me. Well, sometimes your parents led you through positional authority, right? Because I'm the mother and I say so. I brought you into this world and I can, Y'all have heard that one too. Oh, wow. I can take you out. My mother used to say that all the time. And my mother was 5 foot nothing. I said, bring it, Mom. Once I got to be a teenager, I didn't say that before that. She said that to me once when I was about 17, 18. I finally had my growth spurt because I entered freshman year of high school at 4'11", okay? I'm sorry. So I didn't say that to her because she could have at that point in time. But the fact is, character integrity is a relational thing. They see in something in you that they trust you. Sacrifice. They respect what you suffered. Somebody a little while ago said, Doss. Do you respect what he had to suffer? Desmond Doss? You know the story, most of you. Hacksaw Ridge. When you see somebody that goes through that kind of experience, you respect him. I had lunch with him one day, totally by accident. It was kind of cool. I had been asked to do music at a big, huge Pathfinder, Southern Union Pathfinder camporee. So I was at the speaker's tent getting lunch, and he and his wife came and said, "Can we sit down with you?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." Yes, sir. Delightful man. We talked for about 45 minutes, and I had all kind of questions that I stifled myself from asking because I really wanted to. I did ask a few, but I respected what he went through. Abilities, that is what you can do. Now, too many times as leaders, we put too much emphasis on abilities, but you notice when we did the survey, where did abilities place? 5th, 6th, 7th. We think if I can do it, I got this. It's not about the abilities, although those play in. You need to be able to be competent in what you're doing. Passions and convictions, you have a clear purpose. You know why you're there. Going back to that whole choice thing, God allows you the choice to choose your career path kind of thing we talked about earlier. You have to have a clear purpose. You can choose whatever, but you need to understand that your purpose is to honor God no matter where you end up. Your purpose is to point people to Him, not to you. Your purpose is to make His ways plain to others, no matter what career field you go into. You got a clear purpose, people respect that, they'll follow that. Experience, because of your track record, you've shown in the past you can be trusted. The more reasons you give others to follow, the greater your volume and variety of influence. Now, somebody help me with that. What do you think that means, volume and variety of influence? What do you think that means? Give the man a microphone. Maya, don't hog it to yourself.
I think it's because not each one is going to speak to a certain person. So the more of these boxes you can check, the more different people you can reach, because some people may put a high emphasis on character and integrity. But if that's not per se where you're the strongest at, then you may not have the influence over them. But as many of these you can check off, then you'll have a greater influence, and more people will like you. Okay, some people like you because you're sacrificed, others because of your abilities, others because of your passion, things like that.
So the more of those you have, the greater, it says, your volume and variety of influence. It means you can actually enlarge your territory. God can use you to have a greater influence. All right? So let's look at the book. Everyone must earn the right to be followed. Consider the story of Joshua. Now, Numbers chapter 13, verses 25 to 33. You remember the story. Joshua, Caleb, all the spies had gone into the land. And they came back and they said, well, what'd you think? They said, well, it's a good land. And there's grapes that are ginormous. Look at this bunch of grapes we brought back. It took 2 men with a pole between us to carry this bunch of grapes. That's some big grapes, y'all. I didn't see any of that size back on our tray today. That's some big grapes. It's a good land. And Caleb and Joshua said, and we should go forward and take the land. But the other guys said, wait. There's giants in the land. And to them, we look like ants. All they got to do is go, and we're squished. Now, Joshua had influence, did he not? He was up there helping with Moses. He was helping Moses do stuff. But they listened to the other spies. And what happened? God took them in a great big circle. We talked about that last night. God says, will you trust me here? You say yes. Will you trust me here? Yes. Will you trust me here? No, can't do that. Okay, he's patient. You go in a big circle. He brings you right back. They came right back to the same spot. Do you trust me here? After 40 years, and all the other guys had died in the wilderness, I went, yeah, we trust you here. All right, let's go in. Were the same giants still there? Yeah. Absolutely. They were still there. They hadn't moved. Did God beat those giants? Yeah. How had Joshua grown into a place of influence with the next generation of Jews? He built a history with them. Your journey at ACF is to build a history and to show yourself to be trustworthy as you build the history. And the more history you build, the more they trust you. The more they trust you, the more history you can build. And it begins to cycle so that what happens is your influence spreads farther and farther and farther, and pretty soon you're handing it off to somebody else. Did Moses go into the land? No. He handed it off to who? Joshua. So how do you think Joshua grew and earned his right to be followed? Do you think Joshua was disappointed the morning that they turned back into the wilderness? Do you think Caleb and Joshua and Moses, for that matter, were happy with the vote? You know, I'm not happy with some votes the church takes sometimes. But I'm going to go with the people back into the wilderness if I need to. Because they need somebody to continue to point them back to Jesus. Amen. Even in the midst of wandering around, they need somebody to point them back to Jesus. I'm sure Caleb and Joshua and Moses were keenly disappointed when they turned and started back into the wilderness. But because they did the time, their influence continued to spread. They were faithful and said, okay, guys, it's a setback, but we're still going to the promised land. Amen. Took them 40 more years, which is a long time to be disappointed. It's a big circle. So God says, will you trust me here? Yes. Will you trust me here? Yes. He moves you every time. Will you trust me here? You go next level. Will you trust me here? No. It's a big circle. Will you trust me here? Yes. Will you trust me here? Yes. He says, welcome to the kingdom. You just faith walked yourself with Jesus into the kingdom. People get all worried about the end of time. Time of trouble. All it is saying yes today to the one question that Jesus asked you. Will you trust me even here? Will you trust me with this decision? Will you trust me with what bothers you? Will you trust me with your disillusionment? Will you trust me even here? And if you say yes, he levels you up. Joshua did the time. So when they got back there, and God said to Moses, you can't go in. He said, I want Joshua to do it. Colossians 4:6 tells us, let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, so that you will know how you should respond to each person. Now, what if our politicians actually follow that verse? Would our campaigns be different? Now that's a stark comparison. What if all our church members did? Y'all got real quiet real fast. It's that food coma setting in, I can tell. As Christians, the question of influence isn't about the what, but the how. Paul tells us here to consider how we should treat each person. See, what makes you stand out in the marketplace, what makes you stand out on your campus is how you treat other people, even if they don't agree with you. It's how you respond to those nasty snide remarks about Christians. It's how you deal with the cold shoulder. It's how you respond that really builds influence. And the same thing happens within the church. You see a wise old elder, it's not because they're just popping off at the mouth. They're respected because they've learned to listen, to weigh it out carefully, sometimes play the little dog, and then to respond gently and kindly. So how might this consideration affect your influence? Think about that. If you were just to change this one area, how would things look differently for you? Let's talk about it for just a second. Anybody got an idea? Who's hogging the microphone now? Maya? Any ideas? Any thoughts? If you were to change this one area, what would look different for you? Food coma. So we'll leave that as a rhetorical question. We're going to get personal. All right. Evaluate yourself on the following 4 roles. Now, it's been said that good leaders are one of these 4 or a combination of all 4. 1 being that you're poor in that area, 10 being you're excellent. Are you a host? Do you initiate contact with people so they're comfortable? See, we walk into some places we feel we're a host, other places we feel like we're a guest. How do you react differently if you're a host versus a guest?
Well, a host is more inviting or welcoming, checking in on people, making sure they're comfortable, the accommodations are going well. But when you're invited, you tend to observe more.
Now, I noticed a difference last night because I was the host and many of you the guest. When you came in, did you feel greeted? Did you take the initiative to greet? No, I took the host role personally. I wanted to make sure you felt good being here. And you played the guest role. If you're going to be a leader, you have to play the host role. You don't wait for people to come to you. This is a problem I have with a lot of Adventist churches. We send out flyers and we say, come see us. And then we'll tell you the truth. I'm just being real, y'all. We send out flyers with pictures of beasts on them and say, come visit us. And we'll explain it to you. And we wonder why some of the people we get are a little bit odd. Now, I don't want you to get the idea that I'm denouncing evangelism. I'm not. Please don't misunderstand me. What I am saying is we don't play host very well. We play arrogant. Because when you begin to throw it out there and say, come see us, instead of you going to see them, you going and make the contact, you developing relationships, you using your influence, you sharing Jesus with them where they are. Do you see the difference? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with evangelism. I'm just saying we could be far more productive and effective at bringing people to Jesus if we begin to play host, not guest. Secondly, a doctor. You know, you go to the doctor's office, they begin to poke and prod you a little bit. Sometimes in places you don't like being poked and prodded. Just saying, turn your head, cough. But notice where the focus is. It's not on them, it's on you. Part of our role as leaders needs to be the doctor role. You don't need to always be telling about how great you are, how wonderful you are. You're simply asking questions about them. Tell me about your life. You know what? If you listen long enough and you hear them, you ask the right questions, they're going to share where you can step into that role to lead them to Jesus. I was telling some people over here, one of the things that I did at GCA, you're on an institutional campus, and I was pastor out there 15 years, and I realized about halfway into my tenure there that all I did was work with Adventist people on an Adventist campus in an Adventist bubble. And, it's like, it's a Barbie? Well, no. But I felt stuck. And I thought, how in the world can I win people to Jesus that don't know Jesus if I don't know those people that don't know Jesus? But what I realized was I interfaced with them all the time. I go to the bank and I make deposits. I mean, now you can do it like snap the picture and don't talk to anybody. But I go to the cleaners and drop off my suits. I go to Walmart, get some groceries, Kroger, get some groceries. But I decided I needed to be really more intentional. I decided that wherever I went, I was going to begin to ask people their names. Do you know the name of the person that, if you go to the dry cleaners, that does your dry, do you know the name of a bank teller? Do you know the name of, you see what I'm saying? Oftentimes, do you know the name of the janitor in your main building? Now, what happens is we tend to go through life allowing everybody else to serve us. And we give them money for it. That's all good. But we never pause to find out about them. So I decided, okay, I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to, first of all, start talking to all these people that I interface with. And then secondly, every lunch period, even though I could have had a free lunch at the cafeteria out at the academy, every lunch period, I'm going to take off and go to town, and I'm going to begin finding restaurants. I'm going to become friends with the owners and the people that serve there. And I'm going to get involved with their life. And so I began to do that. And suddenly I began to have more and more influence in the community. There's one little sub shop over here. It's a little hole-in-the-wall sub shop. Good subs, if y'all ever want to go there, Sub Delights. It looks like a dump, but man, they're good sandwiches. And Ernie, the owner, is about as redneckish as they come. But I love the guy. It's business in the front, party in the back. You know what I'm saying? Ernie's my buddy. So a couple years ago, I pulled up and I could see in the window and hardly any line, and all of a sudden I see this van load of ladies unloading up there, starting to come towards the door, and I'm going, oh shoot. And I'm on the phone. What do I try to do? Get off the phone fast. Yeah, okay, sure, yeah, okay. I got off just in time to run over the door and open it for all the ladies. Come on in, ladies. Come on in. I thought, okay, Lord wants me to be patient today. I'll be behind 12 ladies, and it'll take me a while. It's all good. I went over, and I got in line. I'm just standing there. And he calls me Brother Don because I'm a pastor. He says, what you standing over there for, Brother Don? Got your sandwich ready over here. Seen you sitting out there. He knows what I get. Whole sandwich is made. It's sitting there. He says, just pay me when you get ready to go. Got too much to do now. It's my boy. Tonight, you're going to have Taco House, one of my favorite restaurants in town. Great Mexican food. Steve is the owner. But he's got this little girl that serves for him. One of his servers is named Vicky. And Vicky, I love to mess with her head, you know. And she says, is everything okay? I said, I hope so. I just ate it. No, I mean, are you doing okay? No, I died 3 minutes ago. Well, no, I mean, I just love doing that to her. And of course, it didn't take her long to figure me out. And she's like, yeah, whatever. But one day I'm in there, and Vicky, so TV screens everywhere, and Vicky just suddenly stopped and she's transfixed. And I looked over to see what she's looking at. I mean, she's carrying somebody's food and she's just standing there going. I looked over there and she's looking at giraffes and rhinoceroses on the Animal Planet. It's usually on sports channels, but somebody had turned to Animal Planet and she's just transfixed. I thought, who hadn't seen a giraffe or a rhinoceros, right? And then the elephants came on and she's like, ah. And then she remembered she had the food. So and she runs over and she hands it to him and she comes back and she's like this. And I said, you never seen big animals before? She goes, no. I said, not even in the zoo? She goes, no. I said, my parents moved here from Mexico when I was 2, and we never had the money. I always wanted to go to the zoo, but never could. She said, we went through all the things, and of course getting our not only the green card, but becoming citizens was so expensive, we just never had the money. So I said, you want to go to the zoo? I said, you got kids, right? She goes, yeah. I said, husband? No. Single mom. How old are your kids? Oh, they're 2 and 4. I said, really? Have they ever been to the zoo? No. What we're going to do, my wife and I are going to take you all to the zoo. We're going to make a day of it. Now, I said that real easily. It's like, yeah. And I didn't think anything more about it. Someday we're going to go to the zoo. That was it. I'm in there 2 weeks later. She goes, hey, Don, when are we going to the zoo? I'm like, stupid. I pulled out my phone. I said, okay, what's this Sunday look like for you? I'm not working this Sunday. Would you like to go to the zoo this Sunday? Yeah. All right, we'll pick you up. And she said, well, I got two kid seats. I said, they can fit in my car. Can you fit between them? She goes, oh, yeah. She's a thin little thing. Oh, yeah, I'll sit between them. We picked them up Sunday morning about 8 o'clock. We drove to Atlanta, went down to Piedmont Park there. We spent the day at the zoo. My wife took a haystack lunch, and we had a cooler. Yeah, we wanted to introduce to Adventism. It's all about the haystack. We took them in there, and I took a bunch of extra cash because I wanted them to experience everything. Every little feeder, we were getting food out. We went into the little the parakeet cage where you get the little sticks. We got the kids' sticks. I got pictures of them going. We went over to the giraffes. We got them those lettuce leaves, and they're standing in line. I got pictures of them, a big tongue coming out, wrapping around the lettuce. We had a great day. I took almost 400 pictures, 380 something. I edited them and I put them on a CD for her. When we got back, and the next day I went to Taco House and said, here's some pictures for you. Do you think we made an impact in her life? Matter of fact, we found out during that day that her birthday and my wife's birthday the same day. So for the last 4 years, they've exchanged gifts. She's my favorite server there. When you get to know people in their lives, you begin to have opportunities to speak into them. You begin to have opportunities for influence that you don't have. A doctor, you poke, you pry with questions, but your focus is not on you, it's on them. A counselor, do you actively listen after posing questions? See, we can be good at asking questions and then not listen. Oh, yeah, that reminds me of a story. I want to tell you. And that's what we do. We ask a question, they tell you a little answer. Oh, yeah, that reminds me of the time that I... What happens when you do that? You say, yeah, I really was asking a question about you, but I really want to tell you about me. And I'm really more important than you, but I'm going to let you think you're kind of important to me, but I'm really more important than you. But it's really about you, me. And it's confusing. Do you actively listen after posing a question, allowing the person to see your desire to understand and not just speak? Proverbs puts it this way. Better to keep your mouth silent and be thought a fool than to open it and prove you're a man without judgment. A tour guide. Do you earn the right to lead people to a destination that is possibly unreachable without you? In other words, you might be the only Jesus they ever see. And heaven would be totally unreachable without you taking them along on your journey. Are you a tour guide? So evaluate yourself on the following 4 roles. Are you a host, a doctor, a counselor, a tour guide? Where would you rate yourself? And maybe you're a little of all of those, and that's okay. 1 to 10, just kind of take your notepad, look at those, and say, where am I on that path? And again, if you got questions, you can put them on Slido. We'll be going to those in just a minute. All right? Oh, Q&A. That took me a long time to write. So let's go to the questions. There we go. Okay, how do you develop others in your group to become influencers? You have to become one of those 4 or a combination of those 4 that we just talked about. And you lead them into that. You develop others in your group to become influencers by using your influence to influence them and developing them through patience and understanding the focus is not on you, it's on developing them. See, when I spend my time trying to work on me and getting you to see me, how much am I building into you? But when I'm listening to your concerns, we talked at lunch. Did you feel heard? Did you feel understood? How much did I talk about me? Not until the end, because I wanted to bring it home. But you felt heard. You felt understood. You felt like you were almost, you said, a little bit freer at the end of the conversation. Now, the point is, my focus has to change from me onto that other person. I'm really about developing them. So my focus at ACF is not to develop me, it's to develop you. It's to help each of you become who you can be. That's why I've committed myself to helping you grow as leaders, so you in turn can help other people grow. That's the whole point of this thing. Because if you grow, guess what? I also grow. Our interchanges help me grow. You suddenly bring a whole new perspective that I've never thought of before and go, oh, well, that's cool. That's nice. And I grow, I stretch. But it's a byproduct of me building into you. And when you begin to build into others and help them become who they can be, you develop them into influencers. Does that make sense? Okay? If democracy really of God, why was there a vote? I'm not going to go in deep into church politics here. I think democracy is of God in some respects. I think it can be misused. And I think sometimes we can just make plain old bad decisions. And when we say it's a simple majority, it may not agree with me. Sometimes that's the best thing. I have to learn to grow through it. Other times, it may indeed be a bad decision. But you know what? Bad decisions can usually be rectified at some point in time. And you come back around. And again, God says, okay, that's not where I want to take you guys, but He'll bring you back around. So ultimately, I don't worry about it. I leave the results up to God. I don't get myself bent out of shape. I could, because I'm one of those type of personalities could work it out real easily and make it freak out. So I would just say, why was there a vote? Because that's the system that we have. Okay, how do you develop others in your group? We already did that one. Get that off my screen, hold on. What are the characteristics of a good host? Well, when you go to a house where you feel totally welcomed and comfortable, and you know what kind of houses I'm talking about, the kind you feel like you can just kick off your shoes and relax. What are the characteristics that make you feel that way? I want you to think through that. What makes you feel like you can just kick off your shoes and have a good time? What makes you feel that comfortable? Relationship. What else?
When they're like friendly and open to you. Like,
When they're friendly and open to you. Yeah. I mean, there are those people we have in the church, right? That you just suddenly you feel warm and good around them just because they're there. And you go to their house, you may not have ever been there before, you might not have known them for very long, but suddenly you feel like, man, I could hang out here. I just like this. There's other people's houses you go into, and you just sit there in a little chair, and you're straight up, and like, I can't wait till we leave. And then there's some of the people that just get straight out weird. But anyway, a good host, the characteristics, I believe, are people who can genuinely make you feel like you're the center of attention, who can genuinely make you feel like you belong. And if you're going to be a good host at ACF, you need to make sure that anybody that comes to your group feels like they belong. Now, obviously, there are qualifying statements of that, because you can get people in there that are just flat out trying to be creepers, for lack of any other better word. And there's sometimes you have to draw boundaries, because there are some people that have no boundaries, and they can be weird. So I'm not talking about that, but I'm saying most people when they come, to make them feel like they belong there, you like having them there, please come again. That's the characteristic of a good host. Okay. How do you tactfully help leaders to focus on others and not themselves? By modeling it. It's the only way I've found. You can keep telling people, don't focus on yourself, don't focus on yourself, The reason we focus on ourselves is because we're insecure. I want to make sure you like me. So if you can accept that person and help them to like themselves, you model that, and suddenly they can begin modeling it too. Now, there's appropriate times for those conversations to say, well, you know what, dude, but ultimately it's about tactfully helping them understand their thing. Okay, we are due for another break at this point.